I did want to mention too, Jake, and not only did Bad News Brown leave it around this time, but also your old nemesis Rick Rude would depart from the company, allegedly due to what he felt was a weak SummerSlam payoff and some issues with Vince stemming back to missing a few weeks of shows with the Warrior due to an injury. Also, Akeem, the African Dream, has left the company at this time, citing road fatigue. And it's rumored that Bobby Heenan and yourself are negotiating with Jim Herd. We've actually got this from the 10/29/1990 edition of the Observer. As
Yeah.
for as for Roberts, his asking price said to be $500,000 per year, but you have to take that figure with this, or rather with a grain of salt, was considered by the NWA to be totally out of line. First off, let me say that's bullshit. You know, if Jim
Yeah.
Herd was if he was able to get you for 500 grand a year,
I'd still be there.
yeah, and man, what a hell of a bargain he'd be getting you at, though. You know, he was paying guys like Lex Luger 6 or 7. I believe Flair is in that range, and man, your stock was way up. So it would be a hell of a get for him in WCW at that time. But let's start here. Was there any truth to any of the negotiations?
No, none at all.
So you hadn't negotiated with Herd at all?
I never talked to Jim Herd.
Okay. Well, let me ask, all these people are kind of departing and citing the road fatigue. I know that a lot of talents were saying they wanted to go to WCW just because of the simple fact that it was constant on the road with WWF, and WCW is a little bit more mild as far as the schedule is concerned. Did you ever I mean it's probably a silly question just because of the crazy success that you were having, but did you ever consider like, hey, maybe I can kind of check it out at least?
No, I never thought about doing that. Not at all.
Oh, okay. And, like, is there any reason why, that hadn't occurred to you, or you were just happy?
I guess I was just stupid.
Well, I mean, like I said, yes, road fatigue, there's a lot to it, but man, you were enjoying insane levels of success, so it would be hard to leave that behind, especially on the biggest stage in wrestling.
Absolutely. When you're in the number one spot, number one place, man, you don't want to drop down a notch just because you're a little tired. I was a lot of tired, but I wasn't tired enough to give it up.
No, and, like, the potential as far as payoffs and whatnot was concerned, I mean, it trumps anything that WCW is gonna do, unless that 500K a year was coming through, holy smokes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yourself and Heenan would stay, but a lot of talents are moving on. Was this pretty par for the course during this era? Would you say that there was a lot of frustration behind the scenes at this time?
A lot of frustration behind the scenes, man. Because there wasn't anybody making 500K where we were at, except for Savage and Hogan.
Yeah, I mean that seems like pretty big money for the era. I know that even years later, guys like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash would say like, ah, you kind of max out at about 400 grand a year. So I would imagine it would get a little bit frustrating seeing guys like Hogan and Savage kind of get these monster payoffs where you're like, hey, wait a minute, I've kind of plateaued,
What
right?
about what about me? Yeah, I remember saying that a few times.